All right, it's going to tell us we're recording or we're live. And then there's always this strange 15-second matrix delay before I can actually get it verified.
Okay.
I don't like to officially go until I can see it going on my other screen, you know?
I got
like
you.
I don't, I've seen too many Terminator films to trust the computers, right?
I feel that.
They're going to tell me that it's going. I don't believe them. I don't think
Yeah.
it's really going.
No, I feel you on that.
We are officially going. It's on there. So, hey, everybody, thank you for joining us for another Parents Helping Parents Live. We're really glad you could be here. It's Monday. It's the Monday after Easter. Hopefully, you had a really good Easter and found all of the Easter eggs and did all of the Eastery things and ate Cadbury eggs and Peeps and all the kind of stuff that you're probably not supposed to eat, and just had a great weekend. So we're really glad you're here. If you're not familiar with Parents Helping Parents, maybe you're seeing this video on somebody else's Facebook feed, maybe you caught us on YouTube. Let me explain just a little bit about the organization, tell you how to stay connected, tell you how to stay plugged in, and then we will get rolling with the meat and potatoes of the night with our guest speaker here. So Parents Helping Parents is an Oklahoma-based nonprofit. We've got one goal and one mission, which is to provide education, resources, and shared experiences to parents who have a child any age that might be dealing with a substance use disorder. So I say child any age. We will help parents who have a child that's 30 or 40 years old dealing with substance use. We'll help parents who have a child that's 15 dealing with substance use. We just want to connect you with resources in your area. We want to help educate you about family dynamics and the disease of addiction and all things recovery. And then what we really want to do is we want to share our own personal experiences, what worked and what hasn't worked for our own families and for people that have been able to find change. So the best way to stay connected with what Parents Helping Parents does and where we do those things is through our Facebook page, which is at Parents Helping Parents Inc., or through our website, which is www.parentshelpingparents.info. There's lots of new things and lots of changes happening in the organization right now. We do host some in-person and online support groups currently in multiple locations across the state. So definitely check out the website and the Facebook page for more information about where you can actually sit down with other parents, either in a Zoom room or in a real room, and talk about what's happening and get some support from them. So let's see. The other thing I should mention is no event, no outreach that Parents Helping Parents offered should ever be considered a substitute for professional counseling, professional medical advice, professional legal advice. We think all of those things are wonderful and we want you to get those resources if you need them. That's just not what we do. Our outreach is limited to sharing our experiences and trying to connect people with resources and with education. So periodically, our groups do bring in some experts that can actually talk on a deeper level about some things, like our brother that we've got coming on tonight. So that's kind of the caveat. If you're watching live, we know lots of people watch after the fact and not live, but if you are watching live, do me a couple of favors. Reach down and click your share button so that this video will automatically stream on your personal feed. So let's do a moderate example, and let's say you only have that sounds offensive. Let's say you've been able to establish a whopping list of 400 friends on your Facebook page, right? Out of those 400, I guarantee you that one of those people knows someone who's struggling with a substance use disorder or has a family member who's struggling with a substance use disorder. And you sharing our videos on your feed just exponentially increases and mushrooms the message of hope that we've got to all sorts of people. So if you've got more than that on your Facebook page, even better, right? So I don't think it's an overstatement to say sharing the video and sharing somebody's story of hope could literally change somebody's life on social media. That's how these things happen. So reach down, click the share button, be sure you like stuff that our speakers saying along the way. If you've got questions, there are two ways to ask those questions to get them answered tonight live. If you try to get them answered in a week when you're watching this on YouTube, probably not going to happen. But if you're watching live and you want to get those questions answered, you can ask that in the comments section of the Facebook page. I will be watching that and monitoring that for our speaker. Remember, Facebook is the internet. And what happens on the internet, it's not like Vegas. Like what happens on the internet stays on there for everybody to see always. It gets out. It doesn't just stay in Vegas. So if you want to ask questions there, feel free. Just remember that questions that you ask there can be seen by everybody for all time who are watching this video on Facebook, even in 1,200 years. In future generations of our planet, they'll be watching this video and going, who's this lady that asked this question, right? So it's on there for everybody to see, but feel free to use it. If you're concerned about your anonymity, if you're concerned about your privacy, we have a private text line that you can also send those questions to. That text line is in the title of this video on Facebook. The only person that reads that text is me. It goes to our private text line, and after we get the questions answered at the end of each live stream, we delete them all. So that's a really private way to ask those questions and to get those answered as well. So with all that being said, I'm going to hand things over to our speaker, the one, the only Pat Vann, who this is the first time I've been able to meet Pat, but I will tell you that my friend Dustin Huckabee, who's been on the show before and who's been on Parents Helping Parents board before, is somebody that I trust immensely and would, outside of his fandom for the University of Oklahoma, seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. So if Dustin hooks me up with somebody that he trusts, then I feel like I can trust him. And Pat is an old friend of Dustin's, who's in the program. I'm sure he'll tell you all about his life and some about his story. So Pat, man, I will turn it over to you. The floor is yours. Let me see if I can unmute you. And you can take it away, brother. If I can figure out how to unmute people on this thing. Man, look at that. All right, technical difficulties. Bear with me, folks. I clicked ask to unmute. There we go.
All right, are we good?
You're good to go, man. The floor is all yours, brother.
All right, thank you, man. And I appreciate you having me on here. And thank you to Dustin for inviting me to be on here. Dustin is a good friend of mine. We go way back to like 6th grade, and then used to see each other at probation all the time before we both got sober. So it was a great experience and good to be on this journey of recovery with him. So my name's Patrick Vann. I've been sober since December 5th of 2013, which is a miracle due to the program and through a higher power. And so I'm grateful to be here. So I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of my story. And then if I can be helpful at all to any families with a loved one who's suffering from addiction, please let me know how I can be helpful. I also work for a facility in Smithville, Texas called the Last Resort Recovery Center. We treat all men from ages 17 and up. And so I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. I grew up in a wonderful, like, loving home. I had every external reason to not become an alcoholic and a drug addict. And so alcoholism, in my opinion, and through others, isn't like causal, it's genetic. And so I did have this genetic bullet from in my family, from not from my parents, but from their parents, is what I've been told. And so and that's also what I've learned, is that it's a genetic disposition to addiction. And so I grew up in a great home. My dad, provided everything for my brother and I, externally as long as internally. Very loving, kind man, like gave me this great example of how to live life and how to operate in life. And I just started using drugs and alcohol when I was around 14 is when I started drinking. And then 15, I started smoking weed. And I just kind of got wrapped up in like what it did for me. And I think like alcohol really started having like a bigger impact on me in my life when I was around 16 years old. And I went to like my first, I think it was homecoming it was like a homecoming event, and I went and drank at an older classmate's after party, and finally got the effects of alcohol and what it did for me and what it could do for me and how it made me feel. And it made me feel wonderful. It made me feel comfortable in my skin, like the whole liquid courage thing. My disease progressed up till I was around 20 years old when I started taking opiates and cocaine and other pills, included into alcohol. I got arrested for the first time when I was 20 for a possession charge. And I was in college. Like, I played sports all throughout high school. And so I was like, was friends with everyone and was like a normal teenager. And I think I got arrested the first time, like my first semester of college. I went to UTSA, go Roadrunners, not really. And, my dad was like, "Hey, is this a problem?" And I was like, "No, it's just bad luck." And he's like, and that's what it was. In my eyes, it was just like bad luck. And then I think like 2 months later, I got a DWI, and they asked me the same thing, like, "Hey, is this a problem? What's going on?" I'm like, "No, it's just bad luck." And then my addiction really, really started taking a hold of me with other substances. And I got in a lot of trouble where there was no like bonding me out or getting me out of trouble. I caught 2 felony charges and a blackout, and woke up in jail and didn't know why I was in there. And that was when everyone around me was like, "You have a problem. Like, you have a serious problem." And so I went to treatment for the first time when I was 20 years old. It was 2000. It was the summer of like 2008. And I went to treatment in the hill country of Texas, out in Kerrville. And I didn't know why I was there. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't speak like rehab lingo, really. I really thought that my parents just dropped me off in like Losertown, USA. Because everyone was talking about how many times they'd been to treatment, and I was very judgmental and not understanding of what this was. I didn't think I had a problem. And people, I kept saying how many times they had been to that facility or been to other facilities. And I remember thinking, like, I'm never coming back here again. And within 6 months, I had been in 6 treatment centers. Within 6 months, I went from living in a nice part of town in a nice home to panhandling underneath I-35 in Austin. And that's just how the disease progressed. And so it continued to get worse and worse and worse for me. I finally got sentenced for my charge and had to do a year in a work release program in San Antonio, which is where I spent the night in jail from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and was able to work from 6 to 6, and then got to come home to jail and sleep there. And I had to pay rent. It's a real interesting thing they got going on. But I did that for a year. I stayed sober for that entire year. And I thought that I could stay sober just by doing that. And I did not. I relapsed within 2 months of being out of that environment. And I went on another 2-year run of trying to do some controlled drinking and some controlled marijuana. And then got hooked right back onto opiates again. And it took me down like a pretty dark path, and I went back to treatment. I went to sober living, but I couldn't accept the fact that I was like a alcoholic. Like, I couldn't, the dots didn't line up for me on my experience. And I also was never really told what an alcoholic is. I thought that it was like external factors, and it was not. And so I went out on another run after that, and I woke up December 4th of 2013. I had like an attempted suicide overdose combination, and I woke up the next day and went and called somebody, and they took me to AA. And I had this experience where alcohol and opiates and dope beat me into a state of being willing to do whatever someone told me to do, as long as it meant I never had to drink or use again. And I did exactly what these people told me to do. I finally got introduced to what made me an alcoholic and what that looked like, with it being this disease concept of being mind, body, and spirit, to where my body physically reacts differently to alcohol and opiates, to where my mind tells me when I'm stone cold sober that I need to go get loaded. And that's the best idea I can come up with when I'm sober, is to go back out and drink and use. And that I have this spiritual component in me to where I feel empty unless I'm getting high or drunk. I just don't feel whole inside. And what fills up that void for me the quickest in those times is substances, is alcohol or drugs. And so, I finally surrendered to this process and went through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous with a sponsor who had been through them before. And it was interesting. The man that I chose to sponsor me, I didn't really know this at the time, but I went to high school with his daughter, and he helped take me through the work. And I had this experience to where the obsession to use drugs or drink again was relieved of me fairly quickly. And I just caught fire. I got super excited for recovery. I finally realized that this is the only way that I'm going to be able to live life, was through this spiritual way of living. And so I had this really cool experience where this treatment center had just opened up in San Antonio, and they hired me with 2 months sober. It was a company based out of California that opened up here. So I started working in recovery with 2 months sober. It's not the most ethical thing to do, or I guess it's not like illegal, but it just probably wasn't the best thing. But it was great for me. I was surrounded with recovery. I was around it every day. I was reminded of what hopelessness and what pain and all that stuff looks like. And so I worked there for 2 years. I had a bunch of really cool stuff go on in my life in that period. Like, I was able to maintain a legal job. I don't think I had worked like a legal occupation in 4 years until that point. My family started inviting me over for Christmas and for holidays. I started being welcomed back in and being trusted with things. And when I had 2 years sober, I got the opportunity to go back to Texas Tech, or to go to college. And Texas Tech has the Collegiate Recovery Center. And so my supervisor at the time was an alumni of theirs, and she worked at the same treatment center as me. And so she told me about it, and I went up there and checked it out and applied and got in. And I was a 29-year-old freshman. And so it was this really cool experience where I got scholarship to go back to school because I was sober, and I had always wanted to be a counselor. And so I went back to school and got a degree in community family addiction sciences with my LCDCi with that degree. I kind of think that Texas Tech made that degree up for students in the center, but it's a great degree. It taught me a bunch, and it sounds really good on interviews. To say that, to spell out that it's called CFAS, but to spell it out sounds really good. And so living in Lubbock was great for me. I met a bunch of awesome people in recovery. My best friend I met through Texas Tech. He lives out in Arizona now, but we stay in contact all the time. And I met Dustin up there, actually. He was up there moseying around, doing like camping trips and stuff. And so it was cool to reconnect with him, and he was in the center as well. And it was a great experience. And so I lived up there and graduated in like 2.5 years. I moved to Wimberley, Texas to work as a counselor at a facility out there. And I was there for about a year, and then I got an offer to work at the Last Resort, where I'm currently at now. And it's an amazing facility. I do like these weird vision journals every year at the beginning of the new year, to write out what I would like my year to look like, and things that I want, and the way I would like for things to turn out, just through like kind of like some manifestation stuff and law of attraction exercises I was taught. And one of them on there that year was that I wanted to work in an all men's chronic relapse 12-step immersion facility. And I didn't really know of too many at the time. I had heard of some, but I didn't know a lot. And about 3 months after writing that in a journal, someone from the Last Resort reached out to me, who I sponsored in Lubbock like 2 years earlier, and was like, hey, we're looking for a new clinician. I think you'd do really good out here. And so I went out there and interviewed and fell in love with it out there. And I was a clinician there for about 2 years. And it was amazing. It was very supportive and very helpful, and helped me learn and grow a lot as a counselor out there. And through my recovery journey out there was interesting, because I moved out in that area and wasn't super connected to a fellowship, but always had friends from all over the state and stuff. And like, my recovery journey hasn't been like, for the first 6 years I was sober, things were wonderful. They were awesome, amazing. God really showed up all over my life and in really cool ways. And then that 6th year was hard. Staying sober was, I don't want to say challenging, but it was just, things got hard. And I had never experienced that throughout my time. A long-term relationship had ended during that time that I was in. My mom passed away kind of out of nowhere during that time. And just, I felt kind of isolated out there. And so to lean back into recovery and to lean on a sponsor and a fellowship during those hard times, it's always been able to help me through those things. And I'm very grateful to God, for carrying me through that, and through my father and my family still, and everyone who's, and my and everyone who was there for me during that time. I do believe that, like, when I can't feel God's presence in hard times like that, he surrounds me with like his angels, who are people in recovery that are there to like carry me and like help me stay connected. And so that was my experience with that. And life has been nothing but short of a miracle for me to be able to sit here now. And so I was out in Kerrville today for an event, and I didn't realize how far away I was from this talk. And so I actually was going to be late if I went back to my house. So I just called my dad, and he lives kind of close out here. So I called him and was like, hey, I need to do this Zoom call for this. And I was able to come in here and do that. And I think he's the only person through the pandemic who didn't have a Zoom set up. And so it's just really cool how full my life is because of recovery. And man, like, I didn't think that I had a chance of staying sober. I've been sober like 8.5 years now. There's been there was times like where I just didn't want to fight anymore and didn't want to do this in active addiction. And my life has definitely taken on a totally new meaning of just being able to be helpful to people who are struggling with addiction and the families. At one of the facilities I worked at, I got to help create a family workshop and work with families. And that was one of the coolest experiences I've had, is watching the families heal with the loved one. Because I think for a long time, like, I wanted my life to, I just wish I could go back to this stage in my life. And it's like, dude, you're 18, you're 17. Like, life never going to get that back. And what I got to experience is having like a totally new life, where I couldn't imagine what my life would look like now. My first sponsor had me write out for like 6-month goals, 1-year goals, 5-year goals when I first got sober. And my goals were like, keep a job or get a job, stay sober, fill up my car with gas, eat 3 times. Like, it was very minimal, like shooting the bar really low. And when I had 6 months, I had hit 7 out of my 5-year goals on there. It was wild. And that continues to happen. My life continues to just get more full and better and better in relationships, and just the way that I get to experience life now. It's absolutely a miracle that a lot of people are sober, and and that I'm sober. It's interesting. I've been back to do some like alumni events at some of the facilities that I ended up going to. I ended up going to like 8 treatment facilities and a bunch of IOPs and sober livings. And I would be in treatment at some of these facilities and they would say, you'll never stay sober. And at that time they were right because of my attitude and the way that I treated it. But, I'm not really technically supposed to be out here walking around in society until 2025. I got a 15-year to 99-year sentence charge when I was 20 years old for an aggravated robbery and aggravated assault in a blackout. I got spared and got 10 years felony probation and a lot of community service. And if I were to tell that story about this, it kind of scares people as to what happened. So I kind of skip over that now. But yeah, I was just a complete menace to society for about 4 years. And so I'm not supposed to technically be out of prison until 2025, but I'm able to live free in this world. And I got off probation 6 years early for good behavior, which was a term I was not used to hearing. And so, my life is completely full. I think that like some of the coolest things have happened to me in recovery. One of like kind of like a little God story that I got to experience was when I was working at the Last Resort is when, as a counselor, when I was working as a clinician there, my mom had passed away, like kind of out of the blue. And it was like a month before COVID hit. And I didn't really take it very well, but I thought I needed to go back to work and like really kind of distract myself from it. So I went back to work like semi quickly, from my own choosing. And I had an experience over one of the weekends where I was like, man, like I need like some type of sign that I'm going to be okay, or that, God's going to take care of me through this journey. And I kind of like, demanded it almost because I didn't really know what to do. And so I went into work one day, and out of the Last Resort, some of the clinicians are in these cabins across the campus, and they were doing some office changes. And I walked into my office that morning. It was a Monday morning, and I walked into my office, and there was a wind chime in the middle of my office. And I walked in, and I was like, oh, cool. Someone left their stupid wind chime in my office. And I moved it to the back of the room and set up for group, and the guys walked in, and I leaned back in my chair, and on that wind chime, there was a little thing on the bottom, and it said, when the wind blows, know that I am near you. And I was like, man, that's kind of cool. I just asked God to like show me a sign. And so after group, I went to my supervisor's office, and I was like, hey man, like someone left their wind chime in my office. And he was like, oh no, man, we got that for you like 2 weeks ago. And we were just now able to set that up in your office this morning. And it was just like this really cool experience that I had where, as long as I continue to do the right thing and walk with grace forward, then I'm going to be taken care of. And it was this really cool experience. And I'm like forever grateful for the company that I work for. Because that's kind of like what it's like, is working for a family and being a part of this team. And I know that like my talk description is a recovered gentleman, and that's kind of our theme is turning men into learning how to live life as a gentleman in recovery who knows how to like walk with spiritual purpose. Because that's what we do is we help guys who have been struggling for years get back on their feet and learn what living in recovery looks like. It's not just about staying sober just for today. It's about how to get connected to the universe, to God, to whatever they choose to call their higher power, and how to operate in the world as a man, as a gentleman. And we treat that really well through spiritual practices, through 12 steps, through a strong fellowship, through strong accountability. And that's like how I approach recovery as well, is through the aspects of what we teach. And what we teach and harp on and hit on is a different way to operate in the world, to have this different perspective shift, because that's what I need. That's what I needed, was a total perspective shift on life. Of the book, the AA book calls it a spiritual experience, a psychic change. And I believe that we do that really well with helping guys have those experiences, because a lot of times what I had, and this was my experience too, was I had a ton of knowledge about the 12 steps. I could quote the book, but I had no idea what it looked like and how to live a different way of life through getting connected to God, through this power, through the 12 steps. And so, my life is super full today. I can go to sleep without worrying about anything. I don't worry about getting loaded or getting drunk at all anymore. I'm completely free. I have relationships with my family. I got to go spend time with my sister and her kids a couple of weeks ago, and that was a really big deal for me, because I wasn't the best role model or someone that people would like let around, little children, not for like weird reasons, but just because I was like a menace to society, pretty much. And so to be able to spend time with them and to be able to spend time with my family and be trusted is something that I really wanted to do, but wasn't allowed to for a long time. And one of my biggest goals when I got sober was I wanted my sponsor to teach me how to smile and to like experience joy. And that's what my life in recovery to me has to be about, is experiencing life with joy, and now I get to smile all the time. I enjoy life. I enjoy living. And so I think that's probably enough time for me. So if there's any questions or anything, I really do appreciate y'all allowing me to talk on this platform. And if there's any way that I can be helpful to anyone struggling, please reach out and let me know.
Yeah, Pat, thanks, man. We do have a couple of questions that have kind of been coming in, so we can kind of toss those around a little bit. Pat, just so that you know, and so that people maybe who are catching this on YouTube know, if you go to watch the video on the Parents Helping Parents Facebook page at Parents Helping Parents Inc. videos, it'll be titled with today's date. Probably have a picture of us talking on there. In the comments section of the video, you will find the link to the Last Resort website and the Last Resort Facebook page. So if anybody wants more specific information about what you guys do there, that's awesome. You were mentioning being at your dad's house. We had somebody ask kind of how your dad feels about your recovery and what you guys' relationship is like now versus what it was like when you were really wrapped up in your active addiction.
Yeah. So, my dad has always been there for me. No matter what kind of circumstances that I was going through, but he did draw a line when I was at treatment center number, I think it was 6, where I called him because I was wanting to leave, and he said, good luck. I can't help you anymore. Financially, I'll always be here for you, but I can't support you anymore. You can't come over. You can't come stay at the house. You can't do any of that stuff. And he kind of drew a hard line for safety for the other siblings in my house and for him. And so it was, he finally learned boundaries, learned a healthy boundary, and let me fall. And today he's my best friend. Today our relationship is I hang out with my dad a lot. I just got to move back to San Antonio, and he's my best friend. Our relationship is it's special because I've always wanted to be like my dad because he's a great guy. And so he's helped me out a lot, and he just drew boundaries. And now we play golf once a week. I beat him now. so he's a little salty about that. But no, it's hard to say without getting choked up about how close we are.
What are some of the things that your family did to get healthy while you were doing what you needed to do to get healthy? Was there anything that they engaged in, anything that they stepped into that helped them deal with everything you had going on?
Yeah, so all the treatment centers that I went to, the majority of them did offer family programming, and they did go to family programming while I was in treatment, which is like a weekend. Like, it was like one weekend a month they would go to, and they would learn about the disease of addiction, and they would learn about boundaries and family dynamics. After like the fifth one, they were done. They weren't attending any more family programming, but they did do individual therapy on themselves. And my mom did Al-Anon, and my dad, once he understood that addiction was a disease, he was like, there's nothing we can do. He was like, you gotta do what you gotta do. I realize I can't help you. I'm powerless over your addiction, but I can at least know when to say no and how to help.
Yeah. I always ask, we had somebody ask this, but I always ask a really similar question to kind of wrap things up. If you had like 60 seconds or 90 seconds to give a message to either a struggling addict or alcoholic, or to a family who had a young person or a son or a daughter that was struggling, like, what would that 60-second or 90-second message be?
So to the family, it's that you didn't cause this. That unless you physically shot your loved one up with whatever, you did not cause this. There's nothing that you could have. I know that families sometimes go back and say, maybe we should have done this different, or maybe this is why, and you did not cause this. The parents, the family, it's not causal. Addiction is not causal. So I always try to emphasize that we want families, loved ones, they want to be able to like try to point the finger and pinpoint why this happened or where it happened, and that's not it. You did not cause it, and you can also not cure it. That this is something for the individual, and so I want you to like take that weight off your shoulders and try for you to learn how to heal with whatever you have going on. And then for the loved one, for the addict who's struggling, is that there's hope. Is that there is hope. You can 100% live a drug-free life with being happy. You can get free of this addiction. You can get free of this disease if you're willing and honest. And for me, like I believe that the place that I work for is one of the best places in the country for men. I wouldn't go work for somewhere where I don't believe in what they do. And we know how to treat men who are struggling with it. So there's hope. There's absolute hope. And I know that you feel alone and different. Like, you don't know my story. Mine's different, but no, like, I get it. And there's hope for you.
Yeah. Great. Hey, Pat, man, honestly, like, thank you for just being willing to step out and to do something like this, to share your story, to spread the message of hope that you're trying to spread. I know that you're not in my community, but I'm sure that down in Texas, have got your hands all over doing things for the community and doing things for the recovery community. And the world needs people like you. So keep it up, and thank you. And thank you for being here and being a part of this.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was great meeting you.
Yeah. Hey, if you guys are up in Oklahoma next week, you got my cell phone number. Shoot me a text. I'll buy you guys a slice of pizza or a cup of coffee or something.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to it. And if there's any families, please know that anything that I can do to be helpful, find me on Facebook if I'm tagged in here, and just reach out.
I will. I'll tag you in the comment section right now so that it's on there. Families that are watching, thank you guys for being here. We always appreciate it. You could be doing lots of other things on a Monday night, including watching American Idol, which has been hot this season, but you're not. You DVR'd it and you're spending that time with us right now. So thank you guys. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another live stream. So Pat, thank you. Families, thank you. We'll see you guys next time.